So in 2024, I'm going to get a little bit more Star Trekky. That's all. Going to do a rewatch of the original series during this year. I think that's a manageable task for me. May not do a video on every single episode. We'll see, because some things are more than one episode, I believe. So I'm a big fan of the original series. Grew up on it, watching it with my mom. So I went back to the OG. I know this. Some folks are like, "You didn't even need to watch this." I'm like, "I did need to watch this." It's called The Cage. This is the pilot. Like, this is before everything. This is Pike. There's no music. I mean, there's music, but it's not the Boldly Go, where no man has gone before stuff yet. Jeffrey Hunter is Pike. I will say what you're going to hear me say regularly. I see all of the elements that work. I see all of the elements that made Star Trek great. I see these amazing things that just it's like it's almost like the concept art before it was fleshed out, right? So it's the concept art of Luke Star Killer in the Star Wars part, right? So he wasn't really Skywalker yet, right? So yeah, things like that is what I see in this first thing. I will say too, the special effects were look good here. I like that. I love this transition. I don't know how they even did this shot. Somebody can tell me how they did that shot. That's a freaking great shot. That's a really really cool shot. So got to give them kudos on that for sure. So I really like that. Um, it felt so. The first thing I observed, of course, is that there's like just blue and golds. There's not a lot of dynamic elements to some of the things that were used for, right? So they just have like little office lamps and things like that. So some of the stuff that we know and think of, there's like a lampshade. I guess it's a lampshade. I don't. Anyway, so there's certain elements that don't feel very futuristic. Obviously, their uniforms are more like modified turtlenecks or something. Here, Spock has the first words. None of the cast is the same. Jerry Hunter is actually pretty good. He's very believable. Mrs. Roddenberry, I believe, is the one lady, right? I think the one person is Gene's wife. Anyway, so all the elements are here of adventuring and things like that. So that part I really liked. I wanted to just kind of get through a couple of other shots and things like that through the episode. The story I think is great. I will say this: the story is exceedingly dense, and I want to say I didn't expect that. It was more dense and heavy than even what I remember, and I think that's a pretty cool thing, right? I think that's what lets you know this is going to be a very story driven show of interest and things like that, not just frivolous stuff. So the early communicator, the early flip phone thing, I thought was also great. I think this is again one of those things like we'll send this back down to the prop department, see if they can, level it up a little bit. That was kind of fun. I enjoyed this. I thought that was really kind of cool. I know some of this has got to be very cringy to Trek fans, right? But for me, I actually enjoyed the journey with this. Like I can see the vision that they had, and it's like certain things just really weren't well thought. I was like, okay, so we have to set up, the bond between the captain and the doctor. Like that's going to be a key element in the show, right? We're going to put him in this little room. They didn't know how to design the room. They didn't have money, so they just have him lay on this bed so that they could have him lit. And it feels very awkward. It feels so strange to have him laying like this. The doctor comes in. Of course, it's not Forrest Kelly. It's not McCoy yet. So we have this doctor conversation, which is fine. It wasn't. It was serviceable stuff, and it was about what you're going to do, putting everybody at risk, things like that. And then it was like having a drink because you could tell the bartender something that you wouldn't tell your doctor, which I thought was a pretty good line. That's not bad. I enjoyed that. Thought that was actually pretty good too. So let me see where are we at. The use of the transporter, the warp drive. You see all this stuff that was happening, and then of course this conceptual element of what the story actually is. I think was pretty good. But like I said, the transporter getting around on the Enterprise using some of those dynamics, I thought were really really good. Again, I understand. I get it. This is all very primitive, cursory type stuff that had to be modified and changed before we get to the show and the cast that we know and love. This is the journey down. He's basically been captured. He's in a cage, but then they give him these hallucinations with this woman, and they end up with this fight. And again, the budget and the stuff like that was real. And I think this is the thing that they had to come up with. And again, some things don't age particularly great, but it just felt like dinner theater, right? And the rubber swords and the costuming and things like that don't really hold up particularly great. But I think conceptually everything was here. Like we were going to have a mission. He has to be very physically fit, be able to fight, hold his own against someone completely bigger and stronger than him. Those kinds of things. So I think all of that worked really well and sets up just interesting dynamics. And again, this all moves very very quickly. Like I said, the show feels and is very very dense. So I liked all that. And I love the fact that as we're going along, you're never quite totally sure of what the rules are. They're unpacking it as you go, which is really, really what was really good storytelling. So I really like that part. I really like the fact that, we get. Well, I want to get to the guys. Let me get to the antagonists here. The Telosians, I believe, would be how we would say their names. I love the fact that they figured out a way to make the little vein on the side of the guy's head move. It's like that was just I really like this. I mean, so look for me, I was like, wow, this is really ahead of its time because I feel like stuff I was doing in indie film, I was doing in college. It's like this is sort of like that on scale with a lot of money and trying to figure that out. And during its time, this is like groundbreaking stuff. So really did like that. And then of course just the writing, just this story and how things are going to play out and how things are going to work and things like that I thought were great. And just lots of costuming, things like that. Trying to find their way and find their audience, I think, was going to be an interesting journey because not everybody knew how much people would like science fiction. Like that was kind of a genre that people frowned on, right? That was like B movie type stuff, right? So they were really struggling to figure out how to not be in that stereotype, and I get that, right? So the pilot feels very tedious and boring because of that, right? Because we have this long, drawn out stuff. We don't have dynamic characters to pull from because it's really only about Pike. There's not like when we watch Trek, we get a lot of fun elements from Spock and Scotty and Sulu and just the whole crew brings different elements of the conversation, their personality and their dynamics, and of course McCoy. And here you've isolated the characters, you've pinned yourself into something that isn't going to be as successful because what are you going to do, right? So they give them hallucinations and costume changes and things like that. So I'm glad that I actually watched this, and I like the twist, right? The girl is, she's under a hallucination, right? So she doesn't realize how old she actually is. She's been there for so long. And when they show her that, it's horrifying. And then, of course, they give her a hallucination that Pike actually stays, so I love the concepts that he was going for in the cage in this first pilot. So when we get pilot number 2, right, for what we're going to do now, we're going to do pilot number 2 next, which is now out of order, which again, it's really kind of weird. So I've been advised by a couple of my experts to watch them in production order. So we're going to do Where No Man Has Gone Before next. So that will be our next pop perspective, is me walking through and revisiting Trek through that. I think once you get past about 5 or 6, it's not going to matter as much because there is a production schedule that kind of lines up a lot better. But that's going to be my thoughts on the cage and early Trek. And it's again, I feel like I'm watching it's a pilot. This is it. This is what a pilot is. It's the pitch. There's raw concepts here that needed to be fleshed out and developed. and I'm glad I watched it. So that's the opening on my take on it. So we'll see where it goes from here. Thanks for your comments. Love to hear your feedback, and we'll see where this journey goes together.
At the edge of the universe, 400 men and women are probing the immeasurable blackness of space. Their leaders are an Earthman with no fear and a stranger with no heart. Travel beyond our time and solar system, into new galaxies, into worlds beyond your dreams. Star Trek, every week, in color on the NBC television network.